Hey there, future platoon leader. Today, we're strapping on those tactical vests and grabbing those field manuals
Yeah,
because we are diving deep into the heart of offensive operations
that's right.
with ADP 390.
That's right. We're talking about the Army's playbook for taking the fight to the enemy.
Okay.
And trust me, this isn't just some dry manual. This is where theory meets the thunder of combat.
Okay, before we get too far, let's define the offense.
Right.
It's about seizing the initiative, dictating the terms of engagement,
Right.
and ultimately achieving your objective.
Think of it like this offense is the decisive form of warfare,
Okay.
the ultimate way to impose your will on the enemy.
Now, ADP 390 lays out the goals of the offense. And sure, defeating the enemy is the most obvious one.
Of course, we aim to destroy enemy forces, but that's not always the primary objective. Sometimes it's about achieving a more advantageous position.
So it's not always about going for the full knockout punch.
Exactly. ADP 390 emphasizes securing decisive terrain. Think back to the Battle of Iwo Jima in World War II.
Right.
The Americans didn't just focus on eliminating every Japanese soldier.
Right.
Taking control of Mount Suribachi, that was decisive terrain. It gave them a strategic advantage, changing the course of the battle.
Okay, so controlling key terrain can be more impactful than just racking up enemy casualties.
Absolutely. And it's not just about hills or mountains.
Right.
Imagine you're a platoon leader in a modern urban environment.
Okay.
A rooftop that provides clear lines of sight, or a building that controls a key intersection.
Sure.
Those could be considered decisive terrain in that context.
So thinking like a platoon leader, how do I, with limited resources, effectively influence the fight for decisive terrain?
That's where your understanding of the bigger picture comes in.
Okay.
You need to know which pieces of terrain are critical to the overall success of the mission.
Right.
And then maneuver your platoon to either secure those areas or deny the enemy access to them. Even if you can't hold the terrain itself, sometimes just disrupting enemy movement through that area can be a victory.
So we've got terrain. And what other goals are we talking about in ADP 390?
Depriving the enemy of resources.
Okay.
It's not just about blowing up ammo dumps,
Right.
although that's always satisfying.
Sure.
Think about cutting off their supply lines,
Right.
disrupting their communication networks, or even seizing a key bridge that they need for reinforcements.
Essentially, you're crippling their ability to even wage war effectively, right?
Precisely. And sometimes the goal of the offense isn't about direct engagement.
Okay.
ADP 390 talks about utilizing offensive operations to gather intel or deceive the enemy.
So we might use offensive maneuvers to keep them guessing, to mask our true intentions?
Exactly. A well-timed feint can be just as effective as a full-blown assault.
Yeah.
It's about keeping the enemy off balance.
That's fascinating. Now, ADP 390 highlights what it calls the 4 hallmarks of a successful offense. Audacity,
Right.
concentration, surprise, and tempo. What makes these principles so critical?
Well, let's take audacity.
Okay.
A bold and unexpected maneuver can catch the enemy completely off guard,
Right.
throwing their plans into disarray.
Sure.
It's about calculated risk-taking.
And we've got a great example of that from history, right?
Sure.
Think about the Allied invasion of Normandy on D-Day.
Right.
The Germans never anticipated an attack on that scale in that location.
Right.
That audacity, it completely shifted the momentum of the war.
Exactly. Now, audacity without concentration can lead to recklessness.
Right.
You need to focus your combat power at the decisive point to achieve a breakthrough.
It's like a hammer blow, right?
Yes.
You're putting all your force behind that one strike to shatter the enemy's defenses.
And then there's surprise,
Right.
which is all about striking when and where the enemy least expects it.
Of course.
Remember the 7th and 8th Corps' turning movement during Operation Desert Storm?
Yes?
That was a textbook example of surprise.
Wow.
By secretly maneuvering hundreds of thousands of troops into the Iraqi flank.
Yeah. They achieved complete tactical surprise, sending the Iraqi forces into disarray.
It's like that perfectly executed play in a football game, when one team fakes a run and then throws a deep pass for a touchdown.
Right.
The defense is left stunned and scrambling.
And finally, tempo.
Okay.
And maintaining a high tempo of operations allows you to seize and retain the initiative, keeping the enemy constantly reacting to your moves.
So tempo is about maintaining that momentum like a boxer who keeps the opponent on their back foot,
Right.
unable to counter effectively.
Yes.
So we've got these 4 hallmarks working together almost like different gears in a well-oiled machine.
That's exactly it. And ADP 390 emphasizes how these characteristics are interlinked.
Right.
Success in one often enables success in another.
Like a chain reaction. All right, so we've got our goals and we understand these critical hallmarks.
Right.
Now, ADP 390 breaks down offensive operations into 4 distinct types.
Right.
And it's not all about charging head-on, is it? Not at all. Sometimes you need to feel out the enemy, gain a clearer picture of their dispositions.
Okay.
That's where movement to contact comes in.
Okay.
Think of it as the opening act, setting the stage for the main event.
Okay, so movement to contact is about gaining information before committing to a full-blown assault.
Right.
What about the attack itself?
ADP 390 distinguishes between a deliberate attack and a hasty attack.
Okay.
The deliberate attack is just that, deliberate.
Okay.
It's planned, meticulously utilizing all available information about the enemy's position.
So you're going in with a clear plan and a good understanding of the enemy's strengths and weaknesses.
Right. But then there's the hasty attack,
Right.
which is all about seizing a fleeting opportunity.
Okay.
It's about reacting quickly and decisively to exploit an enemy weakness.
That sounds like it requires some serious on-the-spot decision-making.
It absolutely does. Sometimes the best opportunities present themselves when you least expect them.
Sure.
You need to be adaptable and ready to shift gears quickly.
Okay, so we've got the initial contact and the attack. What comes next in this offensive playbook?
That's where exploitation comes in.
Okay.
This is where you capitalize on a successful attack,
Right.
pushing deeper into enemy territory and preventing them from regrouping.
So you've got them on the ropes, and now you're going for the knockout punch.
Precisely. Exploitation is about maintaining that pressure,
Okay.
preventing the enemy from catching their breath and regaining their footing.
Right.
It's about turning a tactical victory into a decisive one.
And finally, we have the pursuit. This one seems pretty self-explanatory.
Yes, this is about relentlessly pursuing a fleeing enemy force,
Right.
aiming for their complete destruction or capture.
Okay.
Imagine a pack of wolves chasing down a wounded animal.
Right.
That's the kind of relentless pressure you want to apply during a pursuit.
So whether you're conducting a carefully planned assault or rapid exploitation, knowing which type of offensive operation to utilize and when is key.
Yeah,
It seems like adaptability is a major theme here.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
As a platoon leader, you need to be ready to adjust your plans on the fly based on the situation at hand.
Right.
You're going to be faced with a lot of what-if scenarios out there.
Sure.
And the decisions you make in those crucial moments can mean the difference between victory and defeat.
Of course.
But no matter the type of offensive operation you are conducting, effective command and control is essential.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's discuss that next.
Okay.
You are leading from the front.
That's right.
Yeah.
You as the platoon leader are the tip of the spear when it comes to command and control.
Right.
And ADP 390 provides a clear framework for effective leadership in the field.
Okay, so walk me through this framework. What are the key elements that a platoon leader needs to master?
It boils down to 6 essential actions. Understand, visualize, describe, direct lead, and assess.
Okay.
It starts with understanding the situation. What's the mission? What's the terrain? Who is the enemy?
So it's about gathering all the intel you can before you even think about giving orders.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Then you move on to visualizing. You need to form a clear mental picture of how you want the operation to unfold.
I'm picturing those little army men on a map, moving them around as I plan out the attack.
That's a good analogy. Once you have that vision, you need to describe it to your squad leaders clearly and concisely.
That's where those clear and concise mission orders come in, right?
Exactly. Your troops need to know exactly what their objective is and how they fit into the larger plan.
Okay.
Then you issue those orders and make sure everyone is on the same page.
And this is where things can get tricky in the heat of battle, especially if those comms systems go down.
Right.
What happens when we're dealing with radio silence or jammed frequencies?
That's when your ability to communicate intent becomes absolutely crucial.
Okay.
Your soldiers need to understand not just what you're telling them to do, but why they are doing it.
Okay.
That way, even if they lose contact, they can still make decisions that align with your overall objective.
So it's about empowering them to think for themselves when the situation demands it.
Exactly. Now, the next step is lead. This isn't just about barking orders. It's about inspiring your troops, leading by example, and demonstrating courage under fire.
Okay, so you're leading the charge both figuratively and literally.
Yeah.
What about that final piece, assessing?
Assessing is about constantly evaluating the situation,
Okay.
analyzing what's working, what's not working, and being ready to adapt your plan as needed.
Right.
Remember, No plan survives first contact with the enemy.
That's where those decision points come into play, right?
Exactly. Decision points are those predetermined moments where you, the leader, might need to adjust your approach.
Okay.
It's about anticipating those curveballs and having a backup plan ready to roll.
It seems like flexibility and adaptability are essential skills for a platoon leader.
They are absolutely critical. Now let's talk terrain.
Oh, okay.
Remember, the battlefield is a three-dimensional chessboard.
Right.
How you move your troops across that terrain can make or break your attack.
And ADP 390 talks about this idea of creating multiple dilemmas for the enemy. What exactly does that mean?
It's about putting them in a position where no matter what choice they make, it plays to your advantage.
Okay.
You want to force them into unfavorable decisions, disrupting their plans, and keeping them constantly reacting to your moves.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this all ties together.
Yeah.
You're not just charging into battle blindly. You're thinking several steps ahead,
Right.
anticipating the enemy's reactions,
Yes.
and using the terrain to your advantage.
Exactly. Now, the type of unit you're commanding will also influence your options.
Right.
Each element has its strengths and weaknesses.
Right. Let's break that down a bit. We've got our armored units, strikers, and dismounted infantry.
Sure.
What are the key considerations for each when it comes to maneuvering on the battlefield?
Think of your armored units as your heavy hitters.
Okay.
They're incredibly powerful, but they need open terrain to really bring that firepower to bear.
Right.
Think wide open deserts or rolling hills.
So you wouldn't want to send a tank column into a dense jungle or a crowded urban environment?
Not if you can avoid it. That's where your striker units come in.
Right.
They provide a good balance of speed, maneuverability, and firepower, making them adaptable to a variety of environments.
Okay, so they're like the all-terrain vehicles of the battlefield.
Yeah.
What about our boots on the ground, the dismounted infantry?
They are your masters of complex terrain.
Right.
They can navigate those tight spaces, clear buildings, and engage the enemy in close quarters combat.
Okay.
Think forests, mountains, and urban environments.
It seems like understanding the strengths and limitations of each unit is vital for a platoon leader.
Absolutely. You need to be able to assess the terrain, analyze the enemy's dispositions, and then deploy your forces in a way that maximizes their effectiveness.
So it's all about choosing the right tool for the job.
Precisely. And once you've chosen your tools, you need to think about how you're going to move them across the battlefield.
Right.
That's where formations come in.
Okay, so let's talk about formations. ADP 390 gets pretty specific about different formations and their tactical application.
Sure.
What are some key things for a new platoon leader to keep in mind?
Formations are all about maximizing firepower and security, depending on the situation.
Okay.
Think about it like a football team choosing their offensive formation based on the down and distance.
Right.
You wouldn't use a shotgun formation if you're trying to run up the middle.
Right, you'd want a tight formation, maybe a wedge or a diamond to punch through the defensive line.
Exactly.
Mm.
Similarly, on the battlefield, you'll use different formations depending on whether you're advancing, defending, or maneuvering under fire.
So formations are all about adaptability and positioning your troops to maximize their effectiveness while minimizing their exposure to enemy fire.
Right.
What about this concept of assured mobility? It sounds like something out of a luxury car commercial.
It does, doesn't it? But in the world of military operations, assured mobility is no joke.
Okay.
It's about ensuring your forces can move quickly and efficiently across the battlefield, even when facing obstacles.
Okay, so it's about more than just having fast vehicles or troops who can march for miles.
Absolutely. ADP 390 breaks down assured mobility into 6 primary tasks: reaching obstacles, clearing routes, establishing routes, improving mobility, securing crossings, and landing zones.
So it's about engineering the battlefield to facilitate movement.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on those tasks? This seems critical, especially for a platoon leader who might be tasked with leading the way.
Absolutely. Breaching obstacles is exactly what it sounds like.
Okay.
Your platoon might need to clear minefields, breach enemy defenses, or even create a path through a dense forest.
Okay.
Clearing routes involves removing debris, enemy patrols, or anything that might slow down your advance.
Right.
Establishing routes is about setting up designated paths for vehicles and troops to follow.
That makes sense. And I imagine this is especially important when you're moving heavy equipment or trying to maintain a rapid pace.
Exactly. Now, improving mobility is about enhancing those routes, maybe laying down temporary road surfaces, reinforcing bridges, or creating bypasses around difficult terrain.
So it's about making those paths as efficient as possible.
Precisely. And then we have securing crossings, which might involve securing bridges, establishing fording sites across rivers, or even setting up air assault operations.
So it's about controlling those critical choke points.
Yes, and finally you have landing zones,
Okay.
which are all about securing areas for helicopters or aircraft to land and disembark troops or equipment.
It seems like assured mobility is all about planning coordination and anticipating potential roadblocks.
You got it. Now remember that maneuvering troops is only one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
Let's move on to those crucial supporting elements that can make or break an offensive operation.
Okay.
We're talking about fires, intelligence, and sustainment.
Right. Because even the best planned maneuver can fall apart without proper support.
Yeah.
Let's dive into those, starting with fires.
When we talk about fires in this context, we're talking about the coordinated application of firepower to support your maneuver elements.
So it's about more than just lobbing explosives at the enemy. It's about precision and coordination.
Exactly. You've got preparation fires, softening up enemy positions,
Right.
counterfire suppressing enemy artillery, and then those precise strikes taking out high-value targets like enemy command posts or communication hubs.
It sounds like a dangerous dance, coordinating all that firepower in close proximity to friendly forces.
It absolutely is. That's why communication and coordination between maneuver elements and fire support teams are absolutely essential.
Right.
And that brings us to intelligence.
Intelligence, the eyes and ears of any successful operation. What are some of the ways that a platoon leader can utilize intelligence to improve their chances of success on the offensive?
Intelligence is about using every resource at your disposal, from satellite imagery and drone reconnaissance to good old-fashioned human intelligence gathering,
Right.
to paint a clear picture of the battlefield.
So you're gathering as much information as possible about the enemy, the terrain, and the surrounding environment.
Right. ADP 390 emphasizes the importance of IPB intelligence preparation of the battlefield.
Right.
It's about analyzing the terrain, identifying likely enemy avenues of approach. Right. Pinpointing key terrain features and understanding the enemy's capabilities and weaknesses.
Knowing where the enemy is hiding, where they're most vulnerable, and how they are likely to react to your movements.
Exactly. And this is where your understanding of the operational environment comes into play.
Okay.
Are you operating in a dense urban environment, a mountainous region, or a desert?
Right.
Each environment presents unique challenges and opportunities.
So you've got to be adaptable and ready to adjust your tactics based on the intelligence you're receiving.
Absolutely. The better your intelligence, the better your chances of achieving surprise, concentrating your forces effectively, and maintaining a high tempo of operations.
Right.
But even with the best intel and fire support in the world, your offensive will grind to a halt if you can't keep those troops supplied.
Which brings us to sustainment.
Sustainment is the lifeblood of any military operation. It's about ensuring that your troops have the food, water, ammunition, medical supplies, and everything else they need to keep fighting.
It's the logistics, making sure all those essential supplies are flowing smoothly to the front lines.
Precisely. And when you're pushing deep into enemy territory, those supply lines can get stretched thin,
Right.
making you vulnerable to counterattack.
So how do you mitigate that risk as a platoon leader?
Communication and coordination with your higher headquarters are key.
Okay.
You need to keep them informed of your supply situation and be prepared to adjust your plans based on the availability of resources.
So it's about maintaining that situational awareness, both on the front lines and in terms of your logistical tail.
You got it. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about what happens when even the best defenses start to lose momentum.
Okay.
ADP 390 introduces this concept of culminating points.
Okay.
What's the significance of this for a platoon leader?
Culminating points. So you're saying even a successful attack can run out of steam.
Precisely. It's like a car running out of fuel. You might be speeding towards your objective, but you can't keep going forever.
Right.
Eventually, you need to refuel or risk stalling out.
Okay, that's a helpful analogy.
Yeah.
So as a platoon leader on the offensive,
Yeah.
what are some of the warning signs that I'm approaching a culminating point? What should I be looking out for?
Great question. It's not always obvious.
Right.
Heavy casualties are an obvious one, but it can be more nuanced. Are your troops running low on ammo, food, or water? How about fatigue? Are they running on fumes after days of constant fighting? Is the enemy resistance stiffening?
So it's about maintaining that awareness of your platoon's physical and logistical state, not just their fighting spirit.
Exactly. And you need to consider the enemy's situation as well.
Yeah.
Have they brought up fresh reserves?
Okay.
Are they fighting harder now than they were a few days ago?
Okay.
These could all be signs that your attack is losing momentum and you're approaching a culminating point.
And ADP 390 stresses that recognizing these signs and knowing when to transition to a different phase of the operation is a critical skill for a leader.
Absolutely. Sometimes that means a strategic shift to the defense,
Okay.
consolidating your gains, digging in, and preparing for a counterattack.
So it's about knowing when to hold them and when to, well, maybe dig in for a bit.
Exactly. And that transition needs to be just as well planned and executed as the offensive itself.
Right.
You're shifting from a mindset of advance to one of hold and defend.
What are some key considerations for a platoon leader when making that transition from offense to defense?
First, you need to communicate clearly with your troops.
Okay.
They've been fighting hard on the offensive, so they need to understand why you're shifting gears and what their new objectives are.
Right.
Then you need to secure your flanks.
Okay.
You don't want to be caught off guard by an enemy flanking maneuver while you're setting up your defenses.
Right, because the enemy is going to try to exploit any vulnerability.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And then there's the physical work of establishing your defensive perimeter, setting up fighting positions, laying down fields of fire, and placing obstacles and coordinating fire support.
So you're essentially switching from those tasks of mobility that we talked about earlier to their counterparts, like counter-mobility, to make that defensive perimeter as impenetrable as possible.
Precisely. Now, in some situations, you might transition not to a defensive posture, but to stability operations.
Okay.
This is where the mission shifts from outright combat to securing the peace.
So we're talking about things like disarming enemy combatants, securing key infrastructure, restoring essential services, and providing aid to the local population.
Exactly. It's about creating a secure environment so that civilian life can return to normal and long-term stability can take hold.
Okay.
And this transition requires a different approach, a different mindset.
It sounds like a completely different skill set.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to a new platoon leader who might be thrust into that kind of situation?
First, remember that you are now seen as a peacekeeper, not just a warrior.
Right.
Your interactions with the local population will be crucial. Treat them with respect, even if they were recently on the opposing side. Second, be patient. Rebuilding trust and establishing security takes time.
Sure.
There are no quick fixes. And finally, be prepared to adapt. Stability operations can be unpredictable. You may need to shift gears quickly based on the situation on the ground.
So it's about flexibility, cultural sensitivity, and a long-term perspective.
Exactly.
Well, future platoon leader, I hope you're taking notes because this has been quite a crash course in offensive operations. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the goals of the offense to the specific tactics and maneuvers outlined in ADP 390.
Right.
We've discussed those 4 critical hallmarks: audacity, concentration, surprise, and tempo, and how they work together to create a successful offensive operation.
Right.
We've also talked about the importance of terrain, the strengths and limitations of different units, the vital role of fire support, intelligence and sustainment, and the crucial skill of recognizing those culminating points and knowing when to transition to a different phase of the operation.
Yes.
It's a lot to process, but remember that ADP 390 is just a framework. Real leadership is about applying these principles to the ever-changing chaos of the battlefield. It's about making tough decisions under pressure, inspiring your troops, and achieving your objective while bringing everyone home safe. And on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought. As you prepare to lead your platoon, study those historical battles, those pivotal moments where great leaders made the difference.
Yes.
Analyze their decisions, try to understand the factors they considered, and imagine yourself in their boots.
Right.
Because when those bullets start flying, it's not about what's written in a manual.
It's not.
It's about instinct, judgment, and the courage to lead from the front.
That's right.
That's what separates good leaders from great ones. Until next time, stay frosty out there.